Welcome back to This Week in Formula One. This week is the week of the 9th of February 2026, and it is finally the week of the Bahrain testing for 2026. But before we get into that, let's get into this week's stories for Formula One, starting off with a story that just came out an hour ago. It's Cadillac's official reveal for their 2026 livery, which they debuted during the Super Bowl. And here we have the first official photos. This is kind of a weird photo. They've got both cars kind of back to back. But I actually really like this livery. I think it looks incredibly clean. I like the kind of white and black logo they're going for. I was worried, similar to Audi, they were just going to go like straight black, which is quite boring. But I really like the kind of two-tone they're going for, and it looks really nice. I like this almost kind of like winding effect they've got going on, where it's like the white kind of like wraps around the car in a cylindrical way, instead of being like kind of like part is white, part is black, part is white, similar to how Audi's doing it. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's just how Audi's doing it. They've got Jim Beam on the little flap there, which I think is pretty sweet. Obviously, I'm not confident Cadillac's going to be anywhere during Australia 2026, let alone the rest of the season, but we will have to wait and see. Let's move on to our next story. We have Vowles, again, speaking up about Williams following concerns after they missed the Barcelona shakedown, as he is doing more damage control, essentially saying that he has no concerns about them missing the Barcelona shakedown. Personally, I still think there's concerns that are valid to be had, because again, you don't want to miss that Barcelona shakedown unless something has gone critically wrong, but I'm more than happy to be completely incorrect in my assertion here, because I really wish Williams nothing but the best, and I hope that they are able to have a good year after having quite a positive year in 2025, but it's certainly still concerning. James Vowles has done a lot of damage control over the past few weeks as well, going on and on about he's not concerned, this was his plan, things are fine, he's happy with it. So it certainly seems like he wants to reiterate that everything is going okay, which certainly makes you think that things are going okay, but also can question whether things are actually going okay. I'm not so sure. But yeah, as Vowles here says, it was one of the hardest decisions of his career to miss the Barcelona shakedown, but ultimately he feels it was the right decision. I personally don't think it was the right decision, but we will have to wait and see to Bahrain to see if it was or wasn't. Obviously, Williams also recently revealed their livery, which I don't think I've talked about yet, so I will talk about that later. But yeah, they recently also completed their first shakedown, breaking cover at the damp Silverstone circuit, as per usual. There's not much to say beyond that. Vowles says he has no concerns, so hopefully there's no concerns. We'll have to wait and see for the Bahrain testing. Let's move on to Williams' car hitting the track for the first time in 2026. This happened, I think, a couple days ago now, on the 5th of February, yes, where they first hit the track with their new livery. So yeah, obviously, I think it's incredibly cool that Williams were able to get out finally. Now that they've passed crash tests and everything else going on, it's cool that they were able to get that car out. I was worried they weren't going to get it out at all before Bahrain testing. In terms of how it went, there's not really much that you could comment on. I'm assuming, yeah, they say it was a fairly smooth day, which is good. They had decent weather considering it was Silverstone at this time of year, and yeah, they're looking forward to Bahrain. But let's talk about the livery. Pull up a nice good photo here. Here we are. Nice good photo. And it is okay. Certainly it feels like a lot of the liveries this year are going for this kind of like, how can we make as little paint possible on the car kind of look, which is not surprising because obviously I'm sure there's a lot of weight concerns about how the cars are going to react. And by minimizing the amount of paint you put on your Formula One car, you can therefore minimize the weight. Whereas if you put more paint, then you make things heavier. So it's not surprising that a lot of cars are trying to minimize the amount of paint that they're using to compensate for this. But in terms of how it looks nice. It's very sponsor heavy, and the whole kind of like Barclays, Komatsu thing they've got going on here is bizarre. And it's fine. I'd probably give it like a 5.5 out of 10. Liveries to me in Formula One is something that kind of grows on you throughout the year. When you first see them, it's kind of difficult to tell whether you actually think they're any good or not, who knows. And I think it looks okay, is my thoughts. So let's talk about Adrian Newey finally opening up on his debut Aston Martin design and how the team have risen to the challenge. Obviously, Aston Martin debuted their car a couple weeks ago now for the first time in the Barcelona shakedown ahead of their official livery reveal, which is later in the week, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, obviously we know Newey is an incredibly gifted mechanical designer, and certainly there's a lot of hope and a lot of questions around the extremities of that car and how it will actually be able to perform considering Newey's genius. But again, as per usual of this time of the year, it will be impossible to tell until later in the year. We just simply don't know. But Newey here is kind of, again, similar to Vowles, he's damage controlling, as if I'm not mistaken, he expressed that there has been an extremely compressed timescale for how their program has gone, and they weren't able to get the actual car into wind tunnel testing until April, whereas most major manufacturers had their cars in that testing in January. Yeah, he says here mid-April, which certainly does condense things and certainly puts a lot of questions as to whether this car will be good off the line, as it very much feels like a lot of things have come together very, very quickly, whereas other teams have had more time to breathe and kind of test the limits of their car, whereas Aston Martin has kind of had more of a struggle. Obviously, we know Newey didn't actually become team principal officially until much later in the year, so who's to say whether or how much of an effect he's had on the wider team dynamics as a whole versus just the car. We simply just do not know. But it's a completely new set of rules for Newey to tinker with, and certainly I don't think that he will not deliver a car that is certainly I don't think he will deliver a car that is not good. But in terms of whether it will come off the line good, it's very difficult to tell. But it's interesting to hear nevertheless. So let's move on to, again, Toto Wolff talking about Mercedes. I just want to talk about this briefly, as Wolff has expressed that he's quite happy, but they simply don't know what rivals can do. There's kind of a general theme here, where a lot of teams are just saying like, yeah, it's cool, but we don't really know what's going on, which I think makes a lot of sense. Wolff has no reason not to be happy with his testing, as it went incredibly smoothly going into the second Bahrain testing later this week. But again, yeah, they simply just do not know. Things went great, things went smoothly, but it's difficult to tell. All the teams are ramping up their testing, and I don't think we'll really know which cars are actually good or not until about mid-year. It's just impossible to tell. So I think it's smart for a lot of teams to come out and say like, yeah, it went well, but we don't really know. Let's not get expectations too high, people. I think ultimately that's probably the good decision. It is former Alpine driver joining Haas as a reserve driver for the 2026 Formula 1 season. This being Jack Doohan, who is an Australian driver, that's why I'm talking about it. Obviously, this comes recently off Jack leaving Alpine a few weeks ago now, and we heard a lot of rumours and a lot of rumblings that he was going to join Haas, and it seems like they were correct. I think it's great for Haas. Certainly, I think it's looking likely that in the next few years, Ollie Behrman will make the move over to Ferrari, and that obviously opens a spot for Jack to re-enter the sport, so I think it's the right decision from his department. I would get as far away from Alpine as physically possible, and certainly I don't think Jack at all got really an opportunity to shine last year. He was kind of thrown to the dirt quite quickly, and in my opinion, done a little bit dirty. Obviously, he's the son of Mick Doohan, who is a multi-champion MotoGP driver, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, he only raced 7 races, so I think it's great that Alpine are giving him another opportunity. I'm really happy for him, and I hope he's able to secure a full-time seat in the future, because having another Australian on the grid is something I will never complain about. Very quickly, let's talk about Frederick Vesti, who has joined the Mercedes as the third driver. I think Vesti was already a part of the Mercedes family, but now he's their kind of major third driver. Obviously, this comes after Valtteri Bottas leaving. And I think it's great for Vesti. Vesti, I think, yeah, he's from the Mercedes Junior program, which is quite a notoriously good program, if I'm not mistaken. And he's been reserve driver for quite a while, so I think it's great for Vesti. Not really much else to say there. Let's move on to Jenson Button. I want to talk about this because I think it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but he's joined Aston Martin as the team ambassador ahead of the 2026 Formula 1 season. Originally, last year, he was that for Williams, and now he's that for Aston Martin. Obviously, Jenson is quite a decorated Formula 1 world champion. He's been around the circle of Formula 1 for quite a while now. And being kind of the team ambassador doesn't really mean anything other than that it gets his personal thumbs up. I quite like Jensen, so I think it's cool. I'm sure he will continue to go around as he'll handle their kind of media and global commercial activities. Certainly I think it's a positive for Aston Martin to have somebody like Jensen in that role, because he's got an entire wealth of knowledge about how the industry works, so I think it's exciting for him. Let's move on to our final story. It's George Russell, as he states here that he's ready to fight for a world championship and he's targeting Verstappen. I mean, of course, it's no doubt that Verstappen is the best driver on the grid. Obviously, there's a lot of positivity around that Mercedes in 2026, and I don't doubt that Russell will want to perform if that car is good. Certainly, I think Russell's in a similar position to Norris, where he's kind of in that peak point of his career to try and scoop up a world championship if he can. Obviously, if the Red Bull is good, it's going to be difficult because Max is not going to go down without a fight. He was 2 points away from winning the championship last year in a not particularly good Red Bull, but I think George and even Kimi Antonelli has expressed a lot of positivity around that Mercedes, and certainly I think everything that everybody is saying points to that Mercedes being the number one car. But whether that equates to George being able to fight for a championship, as he says here, it's too early to say. So with that being said and done, that was this week in Formula One. If there's anything major I missed, make sure to leave it in the comment section below. If I'm not mistaken, later this day, the day that I'm uploading this on the 9th of February, McLaren is doing their reveal for their 2026 car. But as it hasn't happened yet, I will be covering it in next week's This Week in Formula One, so stay tuned for that. Later in the week, I will also be doing a full explained video on the Bahrain testing. I'm going to be catching as much of that possible as I can, though it runs to 3 AM my time, so stay tuned for that video. And thank you guys for watching. As per usual, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment below. If you can, I would much appreciate that. And I hope you have a great, wonderful day. And I'll see you next week for This Week in Formula One. Peace. Bye for now. Bye.